Back in Europe for the first time in 14 months. While they flew, Tim and Joanne's Morris Oxford was shipped to Italy all the way from Australia. With England in their sights, it's here that they began to cross the last continent of their travels. Wherever they've been, they've always captured people's attention, and Italy was no exception.
We've just opened the container at La Spezia Container Terminal, and in an hour's, just under an hour's time, there's going to be a ceremony, and we're going to drive Florence out in front of apparently every dignitary in the town, and the media, and everybody who's anybody in the Croce Rossa Italiana. In fact, somebody's just arrived now in his uniform, looking very smart. Don't know who he is, but apparently they're all here to see and welcome Florence back to Europe.
Grazie per essere qui oggi. Un ringraziamento a Piano Ned Lloyd.
Returning in Italy is a very important moment for us, and receiving our car after her very long voyage from Australia back to Europe with P&O Ned Lloyd, and so receiving our car today is a very special moment. It marks the beginning of our return to Oxford, England, having driven across the world and returned back again.
Nicknamed Florence, this 1954 Cowley-built car has clocked up more than 20,000 miles and didn't have a single flat tyre. But this hasn't just been an adventure of a lifetime. Along the way, Tim and Joanne have raised thousands of pounds for the Red Cross.
This is our first fill-up in Italy, and because it's gone 7 o'clock, we're having to use a self-service petrol station. Not merely that you fill up the petrol yourself, but there's an automatic machine that takes your money or credit card. So hopefully this will give us 20 euros worth of petrol.
50 years after she first took to the road, Florence has endured endless trials along this world trip. Whatever the weather or the road conditions, she's done remarkably well. The journey home alone has seen her travel 3,000 miles across the Australian outback.
We've encountered some pretty challenging driving all across the world, but here in Italy, I think we've encountered the most arrogant driving of anywhere we've seen on the whole journey. Not only do people pull out onto main roads, but very often they even just back out onto main roads and expect everybody to stop or cut across in front of you when the lights are green for us. It's unbelievable.
Taking in a few of the sights, Tim and Joanne chose not to take the quick route back. From here, there's still the birthplace of the Red Cross in Solferino and the charity's headquarters in Geneva before finally returning home. Alistair Fee, BBC South Today. One of the more poignant stops on Tim and Joanne's world tour, as Red Cross fundraisers visiting the area that inspired the start of the charity was a must. The names on this wall indicate all the countries with Red Cross societies.
We're at the top of the tower at Solferino in northern Italy, and it was here in 1859 where there was a huge battle between the Austrians, who had the position on the tower, and the Italians and French. And it was from the casualties of this battle that Henry Dunant, the Swiss businessman, was so appalled that he was subsequently inspired to found the Red Cross. He mobilised the people of Solferino and Castiglione to rescue the casualties, to take them from here, the battlefield, to Castiglione, from where they were looked after.
After 14 months on the road, this is the last episode in their return journey. After leaving New Zealand, they drove this 1954 Morris 3,000 miles across the Australian outback before being shipped over to Italy.
So where are we headed next?
I'm just going to sample on pass to Switzerland. It's going to get to single carriage road. In fact, it is single carriage road. And then we'll hit the motorway through Sion. We've just crossed into Switzerland. Just got a call when we were on the motorway to say Perth Radio would like to do an interview. So we just made a collect call and we're about to go live on air.
The last capital city before London. This road trip has covered 25,000 miles. At 250 miles per tank, it's cost Tim and Joanne some £3,000 on fuel alone.
We're on the Périphérique. It's a ring road around Paris, a bit like the M25. So the big difference is that these roads are full of Parisians. Got to be a bit careful.
The last sea crossing back home. What's made this trip so complicated has been the number of times Florence the car has been forced to go over water. In total there have been 13 stretches of ocean to cross.
Here we are back at Dover, about 14 months after we left. Feels quite strange to be almost home. It's been an incredible journey, one that will probably change us for the rest of our lives.
As they rolled off the ferry, hungry and tired after months away, what better way to feel at home than to head off for some local food?
This is our first meal back in England, fish and chips. This was our last meal when we were in Dover 14 months ago.
The first job back home was to get Florence through her MOT, and the good news is she passed without much work. Today she could be seen driving through London's Oxford Street, and tomorrow her journey will finally come to an end when she arrives back in Oxford. Alistair Fee, BBC South Today.
It'll be fascinating meeting Lord Kilbracken. He's such an extraordinary character. He became a journalist, and then he drove to New Zealand when he got an invitation from the Mayor of New Zealand to go and celebrate the centenary of Christchurch, because his great-grandfather was one of the founding fathers back in 1850. And we're just about to meet him.
Tim and Joe thought they were the first people to drive the route, but Lord Kilbracken wrote to the Times when he saw an article about their journey in the newspaper.
And then we drove around the southern tip of India, and then we shipped to Singapore, and then on down to Fremantle.
By coincidence, in 1950, he too set off in a Morris Oxford just like the one they used. The only difference was his was a new one that he borrowed from Lord Nuffield, the owner of the Morris plant.
Do you remember the steering wheel being
Yeah.
off? Because it's really unusual steering wheel, because it's slightly off centre, it's wonky. It's tipped down to this way, apparently deliberately so you can have 3 people in the front. Do you remember that?
Like the more recent couple to do the route, Lord Kilbracken recorded the journey. He wrote for various newspapers back home in England. Although the car needed some repair work en route during their travels, Florence waited until she got home to the UK to break down. But with some help from this mechanic, she's on the road again in search of new adventures. Emma Rominski, BBC South Today.